If you've ever been in bed the night before a race and you think you've spent more time staring at the ceiling than with your eyes closed, trust me, you're not alone. It's a rite of passage for runners to feel this way the night before a race. And some would even call it a badge of honor because it just shows that you care enough about the next day that you have that many nerves. But what I'm here to tell you is that it doesn't have to be this way. By the end of the video, you'll be able to give yourself permission to finally enjoy the lead up to race day and stop dreading the start line so you can actually get the rest that you deserve. But to get you there, I'll share exactly what I learned by sleeping in my car the night before my first ever marathon.
Extra comfortable.
To explain why in the world I possibly did this, we'll go through the process together of figuring out why you can't sleep, how much it really matters for your performance, and what to do about it to save your race day. The number one reason why it's so hard to sleep the night before a race is simply because of adrenaline. Adrenaline has the power to make or break your race, and that starts long before the gun goes off. Your body has the ability to use adrenaline to create race day magic. But if not used correctly, adrenaline can turn into debilitating nerves. And despite what you might believe, this doesn't even come naturally to the world's best runners. And while it's true that some people enjoy the spirit of competition more than others, I want to help you avoid that feeling of impending doom as if you're going to battle. And I'll talk about ways that you can overcome race day anxiety in a future video, so make sure you're subscribed if you want to see when that comes out. But for now, remember that adrenaline is the root of the issue that's preventing you from sleeping. If you've ever been so nervous where your stomach hurts, you've probably crossed into the territory where adrenaline is hurting you more than it's helping you. So what can you do about this? Because that's why you're really here. Start paying attention to the things that give you pangs of adrenaline, or as I like to visualize it, dumping adrenaline into your system. Part of the reason why I've found it helpful to paint a picture of what's happening inside my body is so that I can claim back control of an overwhelming feeling. I find it reassuring to know that my body can only release so much adrenaline over a period of time until you're just overloaded and kind of fried. That might not sound so good at first, but the reason it's reassuring to me is because if more and more adrenaline can't be released indefinitely, I know it's gonna end at some point. I've even gotten so tied up in knots before a race and long enough in advance of the race that by the time the night before rolled around, I'd already completely exhausted my adrenaline reserves. And needless to say, those races didn't go that well because I didn't have much adrenaline to draw from the following day. But it did plant something in my mind, is that if I could selectively choose when I doled out little bits of adrenaline, I could finally feel like I was the one in control of how my race went. Just imagine being able to have a great night's sleep, wake up, and immediately start dumping adrenaline right when you need it. That sounded pretty good to me, so here's how I did that. The thing that has the worst impact on me for poorly timed adrenaline dumps is actually pump-up music. Maybe I just had a weird childhood, but I feel like that's something that people learn from a young age, that when you're about to do a race or you're in the locker room getting ready for any sports game, there's always pump-up music playing. Other places adrenaline dumps could come from are things like reading the pre-race materials that the race director puts out for you. Sometimes thinking about these logistics is all it takes to trigger that release of adrenaline based on picturing yourself actually being at the race. This is one of the biggest reasons that I advocate for planning a little bit farther in advance so that you can protect that store of adrenaline once you're getting a little too close to the race. What this might look like is really nailing down your plan about a week before the race starts, so that as you get into the day or two leading up to the race, these aren't things that you have to think about. All you'll have to do then is just open up the note or wherever you wrote down the plan for yourself. But compounding the stress of logistics where you need to calculate how long in advance you need to leave for things, when does the shuttle depart, are all examples of things that dump your adrenaline at the wrong times. As you start to become aware of what some of these things might be for you, be protective about this. Like if you had some family coming out to the race to support you, that's awesome. But if they're asking you questions that you know are dumping adrenaline for you and it's not the time for it yet, give them the information that they need when it works for you. And tell them something like, hey, I'm gonna get this to you and you'll have everything you need, and I'm so appreciative of you for coming to the race. This will probably make them happier while also letting you regain control over your adrenaline. It's starting to get dark out, and speaking of nighttime, let's go back to why I decided to sleep in the car the night before my first ever marathon. Truthfully, the biggest reasons why I did this were to save money and save time. And as I step through this, I'm curious to hear if any of this resonates with you down in the comments, because maybe you haven't slept in the car the night before a marathon, but maybe there's some good tricks that you know work for you that you've picked up along the way that others could benefit from hearing. I was staying with family about 2 hours from where the race started. Since I was racing at CIM, I had to work within the way that they wanted to organize the race, which meant no one could get dropped off at the start and that you had to take a shuttle to the race. If you've never been a part of an event like this, it's pretty overwhelming and definitely the kind of thing that could keep you up the night before hoping that everything goes smoothly. Because this is a point-to-point course where the start and finish lines are almost 26 miles apart, most people opt to take the shuttle from the finish line back up to the start so that they're at their car or hotel when they're done with the race. Since I would have had to leave the house at 3 a.m., and I don't even want to think about what time that means I would have had to get up for, I ruled out driving up the morning of and decided that trying to stay as close to the start line as possible was going to be my best move. This would let me maximize rest and simplify things as much as possible on race morning. The problem with that though is that hotels and Airbnbs were much more expensive up there, and as I was looking at the map to understand my drive up to the race, I started noticing some campgrounds along the way. And this gave me an idea. What if I could stay 5 minutes from the shuttle start and avoid all of the unknown variables that come with staying in a hotel? But it was also December in Northern California, so it could easily have been in the 30s at night. Since I wasn't really trying to go camping and have a full-on nature experience, the next best option for my situation seemed to be sleeping in the car. At first, this felt completely ridiculous, and I couldn't imagine anyone else from the marathon being there, but then I let the trail runner in me take over and decided to say, what's the worst that can happen? I had a lofty goal to run a sub 2:30 marathon at CIM, but I also knew that since this was my first marathon, I was gonna PR no matter what. With that in mind, I basically just said, this will be an awesome mental test, and I'll get a really good learning experience out of it. Because if it goes well, I'm probably gonna do this again. And if it doesn't, well, it didn't matter so much. Since it's really about to be dark now, let's talk about how you can stop stressing about pre-race sleep. Okay, now that it really feels like camping, what did I do to leave the stress behind and get a good night's sleep before the race? What if the pressure to have the perfect night of sleep is the very thing preventing you from getting it? After dialing in your training for months before the race, it's completely understandable to think that you have to have the cherry on top and get everything correct, including the night before. This is the very question that I hope to answer with the experiment. I recognize that sleeping in your car isn't an easy thing to replicate. It speaks to the huge benefit of having a basic routine. Ideally, these are things that are both physically and mentally relaxing, while just distracting enough that you're not completely in another world, but that also keep your mind off the race. Things like reading or listening to a book instead of watching a movie, or playing chess instead of a full-on video game are good examples of basic distractions. The biggest thing I aimed to do was aim for rest rather than sleep. I knew since that I'd slept in the car before, I had a pretty comfortable situation where I could lay out the equivalent of a twin-size mattress and be mostly flat. My other favorite thing to do for reducing stress the night before is actually committing to getting up if you just wake up in the night to use the bathroom. We're all trying to stay hydrated the night before a race, and sometimes that might mean you wake up an hour before your alarm to go to the bathroom. Instead of tossing and turning and being anxious about not getting that last hour of sleep, this could actually be a great time to start summoning your adrenaline. I'd have easy access to the bathroom at the campsite, and I figured any creature comforts of a hotel room would just be more distracting and leave me with even more free time to possibly dwell on the race and start accidentally releasing some of that adrenaline a little too early. By getting in the car a little after dark, which worked out to be around 7 o'clock, I was at least able to be horizontal and off my legs instead of being tempted to walk around and do things. Along with this, it's totally fine to normalize one bad night of sleep. Our bodies are so much more resilient than they might feel when we're tired, and knowing that we're miles away from actually doing harm can be the little boost that you need to know that you're doing the right thing. But that's not to say that before the race you shouldn't sleep. In fact, one of the best things that you can do is bank sleep in the week leading up to the race. There's a runner's expression I've heard that's the night before is the most important night of sleep. That's because if you're somewhat rested going into the day before, no matter how poorly you sleep, you're not going to be too affected. And fortunately for distance runners, since we've already done the training, you're not losing that because of a night of sleep. It might not always feel like it, but aerobically dominant sports are not generally limited by your muscles. Things like maximum power production, like in sprinting, or cognitive ability, and being able to make strategic decisions on the fly are not things we have to worry about. Even just one night of sleep deprivation might affect an F1 racer, but fortunately, our only command is legs go. And if it's any consolation, I've had some of my best workouts and races when I've been really sleep deprived. I've actually found that when my brain isn't functioning at its peak capacities, my mind doesn't even have the mental energy to scream at me to slow down. This is hugely advantageous if you can just let instinct take over, race hard, and turn your mind off. Because if you're too fatigued to make decisions about stopping, you're gonna keep going. I've even found this to be meditative, where the constant background chatter that's often in your mind until you get in a flow state during a race just doesn't show up. It's almost like sleep running, and I found that knowledge to really help reduce stress if I'm concerned about being tired going into a race. And just because it could be a good thing doesn't mean I'd try to be too tired on purpose. What I'm trying to convey is that there's positives of both sides of the equation. Just like I wouldn't say you should purposefully stay up late the week before a race just so that you'll be tired enough to fall asleep the night before. Like I said in the beginning of the video, it's actually a good sign if you're feeling the nerves, and it's just a side effect if that's keeping you up the night before, not something to be stressed about. The shift from saying something like, "I didn't sleep at all last night," to "at least I got to lay down and rest," is hugely transformative. These are the kinds of little statements that we tell ourselves that help let us control our own thoughts. To this end, I'd argue that the importance of the night before your race is actually on adrenaline reduction rather than trying to specifically maximize sleep. If you can avoid the things that'll get you too pumped up, that allows your body to be in a restorative state. Some people love to watch a movie the night before a race, but a drama isn't the thing that's going to let your body relax. In the same way, a motivational sports movie might sound super cool to get yourself ready for the battle ahead, but it's not the thing that your body needs at that time. I've found that by shifting the hype and excitement to after the race, I'm able to much more thoroughly enjoy those feelings and celebrate what feels like a victory rather than an impending battle. You might be surprised to find some of the things that overexcite you once you start thinking about it. Many of our current forms of entertainment are just different ways to stimulate your brain. I can almost guarantee that if you're trying to relax by doing nothing, you're going to inadvertently fill your time with things that amp up your nervous system and make it hard to fall asleep. This is another one of the reasons that I actually thought camping would be helpful, because by being in nature and doing some basic things to set up my sleeping situation, I'd be occupied with the little tasks of getting ready to sleep. Even though these types of things would be really inefficient to have to do every single day, having a setup and then pack up as part of my pre-race routine and then race morning was weirdly comforting. This really helped me lower stress by distracting my mind with basic tasks. Hopefully this little experiment of mind over mattress allowed you to see that sometimes things don't matter as much as you think. By skipping the hotel and saving hundreds of dollars on a room that I'd barely spend 8 hours in, I was able to prove to myself that I can still execute a race plan and take things seriously and still perform well despite unconventional situations. Going forward, I can fall back on my experience where I can say, I slept in the car before my first marathon, and so this really can't be that bad. Aside from this, being as close as I physically could be to the shuttle area made it so that I could leisurely get ready in the morning, and because I was out of my car, I didn't even have to pack up a suitcase. But to see just how well this race went, make sure you subscribe because the full race recap is coming soon. Thanks for watching. Peace!